Welcome to Salto del Gato. I'm Marilia, and this is my gumshoe playlist where I cast an astrological event chart and then enter the chart and follow its rhythm to find a killer. Then I discuss the crime and its backstory. I've already cast the first chart for the Murdaugh event. I usually like to cast a series of charts to uncover as much information as I can, and then compare it with the story that's evolving in the media. In this case, on the very first chart that I cast, it immediately identified the killer. I was wowed. You'll need to check out that video to see what it said. Now, the crime I'm working on here is, of course, the Murdaugh murders. And this is part 4. Parts 1 through 3 are already posted. If you haven't seen those, you might want to check them out. I want to take a moment and welcome all of the new subscribers. I am very appreciative and honored to have you on board as I develop this channel. I welcome your comments and your feedback. They're very important to me, so I encourage you to continue leaving comments. If you enjoy these videos, I humbly ask that you please hit the like button. It'll help me grow a community for this channel. Remember, other than where I reference historical registries, ancestry registries, and other relevant databases or newspaper articles, this video is based on GRIS, G-R-I-S, gossip, rumor, innuendo streams. I hope you enjoy this review of the Murdaugh family history. It's quite a saga. I am sure you are aware YouTube content creators have to be sensitive to using certain words and phrases due to the YouTube algorithms. So I am trying to follow the appropriate YouTube etiquette. But now, let's go there. Murdaugh, self-sabotage and money. The name has become synonymous with murder, or red rum, and money. But how did it start? Where did the money come from? Well, it starts with Randolph Sr.'s father, Josiah Putman Murdaugh. He was born on September 10th of 1830. He's a Virgo, and he died on August 17th of 1912 at the age of 81. He was married to Annie Marvin Davis, and they had 7 children: Hattie, Herschel, Josiah, George, Paul, Mortimer, Randolph, and Mamie Murdaugh. Josiah made a fortune in phosphate mining and later in real estate, eventually becoming the moneylender for the town. A substantial pile of money was already established at his death. Census records show that Josiah P. Murdaugh was a private in the Confederate Army during the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. Randolph Murdaugh Sr. was born on February 28th of 1887, and yes, he was an Aquarius, and he died on July 19th of 1940 in a car crash with a train. He was married to Etta, or Estelle Murdaugh, and after her death, he married Mary Murdaugh. A newspaper article states the accident occurred late at night about 1 a.m. while he was returning home after visiting a friend. According to the gossip, rumor, innuendo stream, a.k.a. Grizz, he was returning home from a poker game. Now, the death certificate lists cause of death as a crushed skull, with other related injuries associated with a train wreck. He was the first Murdaugh County solicitor. Grizz says several newspaper articles regarding the train wreck noted that it was odd that his car stopped directly on the railroad tracks. According to the Greenville News, the conductor claims Randolph's car was stopped before reaching the tracks, but just as the train approached, the car lurched forward, stopping directly on the track. Other sources say the conductor saw Randolph wave at him as the train approached. This generated questions about whether Randolph intentionally placed himself in harm's way, and if alcohol was involved. It's kind of ironic if you consider that Paul was a 5th-generation Murdaugh who was involved in a crash. This time, it was a boat crash, which acted as a catalyst leading to his ultimate demise. Other unrelated to anything patterns that I noted in this family generationally are head wounds. beginning with Randolph Sr. crushed skull. And then I can't help but look at other suspicious deaths that seem synonymous with the Murdaugh name. And these are Stephen Smith, blunt force trauma to the head. Gloria Satterfield, blunt force trauma to the head. Mallory Beach, blunt force trauma to the head, leading to unconsciousness and drowning. Paul Murdaugh, gunshot blast to the head. Maggie Murdaugh, 2 rifle blasts to her head. And then there is Alec's stage roadside incident, again aimed at the head. I know I am making associations where none are proven to exist. But what a coincidence, don't you think? And I'll tell you something. I'd wear a bulletproof helmet on my head around any of those Murdaughs. Now let's get back to Randolph Sr. The circumstances surrounding the accident were considered to be questionable. Randolph Murdaugh Jr. would later sue the train company, and the case was settled for an undisclosed amount of money, further enhancing the Murdaugh family trust accounts. And for generations to come, the Murdaugh law firm would make a lucrative business out of suing the railroad on behalf of several of their clients. The recovery from these lawsuits is said to have been about $19 million. The question to ask is if Mr. Randolph Sr. intentionally parked on the tracks or if it was a true accident. Whatever the answer, the fact is that after his death, the family fortunes continued to grow. But I'm not done with Randolph Sr. yet. Now, it is said that Randolph Sr. suffered from maybe some forms of depression, but that it wasn't popular at the time to, be forthcoming with that, and that he also had lost a lot of money in probably some poor business investments and the stock market crashes of that period. Now, in some registries, his wife's name is listed as Estelle, as I mentioned, or Etta. The ancestry records I read noted Estelle's death as February 20th of 1937, so I am a little confused, but I'm assuming that Randolph Sr. may have remarried, and his second wife's name was Mary, and the marriage between Randolph Sr. and Mary is listed as having taken place on June 27th of 1937. And it gets a little trickier because some registries list Randolph Sr. having 2 children with Etta, Buster, and Johnny, and other databases have Sr. having Randolph Murdaugh Jr., a.k.a. Buster, with Mary. And this is possibly the case since Randolph Jr. was born in 1939 and Etta died in 1937. Now, Randolph Murdaugh Jr. was known as Buster, and he was one of the bad boys of the Murdaugh line. That is until Alec, but I get ahead of myself. Randolph Murdaugh Jr. was born January 9th of 1915. He was a Capricorn, and he died on February 5th of 1998 at the age of 83. He was married to Gladys Marvin Murdaugh, and they had 1 child, Randolph Murdaugh III, a.k.a. Handsome. Randolph Murdaugh Jr., Buster, held the solicitor seat for 46 years and only went unchallenged in 2 elections, which he won. When Randolph Murdaugh Sr. passed, his son Randolph Jr. became the county solicitor. Later, Jr. passed the position to his son, Randolph III, Handsome. Now, this caused the Grizz to ask whether nepotism laws should apply. But let's stay a little bit longer on Randolph Murdaugh Jr. In 1956, Randolph Jr. was indicted by a federal grand jury for allegedly being the brains behind a low-country criminal enterprise involving bootleggers. Now, he reportedly told a local bootlegger to move his still to nearby Colleton County so local police wouldn't arrest him. It is alleged that they had this process they referred to as friendly raids. The prohibition laws were still in effect, and every now and then there would be a raid on the moonshine stills. But under Murdaugh's protection, the raids were termed friendly raids. The sheriff would go out and conduct a raid, but Murdaugh Jr. would first make sure that the still owners were aware that this was happening. Bootleggers were happy to, amongst themselves, pick a willing scapegoat to take the fall. That person would receive a slap on the wrist, a fine, or a small jail sentence, and they would be rewarded by the organization, as it were. But in this way, the operation could continue. This was known as the friendly raids. Now, that indictment listed Murdaugh, Sheriff Haskell Thompson, and about a dozen others, including 2 judges, of having conspired over several years to violate the Internal Revenue liquor laws. Randolph Jr. resigned from his position for several months while this trial was taking place, but he won back his seat uncontested in the next election and served as solicitor for another 30 years. Bam! Such is the power of the good old boy's privilege in the Low Country. Now look, I pay my taxes faithfully, but I'm not a fan of the IRS or of the government's ways of getting all up in your business when you're trying to make a buck. I do have a problem when opportunity is not equal, and it's unequal when you use your power, status, pedigree, or position to steal from underprivileged people or block others from making a profit. Now, hopefully, all that has happened to the Murdaugh dynasty will change their approach, but I highly doubt it. If the Murdaugh money was funded by Randolph Murdaugh Sr. staging his accident, then as far back as I can go, the karma starts there with him. I couldn't go much further. I couldn't uncover much more on Josiah Putman Murdaugh, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he was an ethical businessman. Now, this then makes bad boy Randolph Murdaugh Jr. Buster the one who starts the downhill spiral of the dynasty. It will take 2 future generations of Murdaughs before the name becomes synonymous with self-destruction. Anyway, here's an example of the Murdaugh power. When Buster Murdaugh III was indicted, they did a lot of behind-the-scenes manipulation. Familiar Murdaugh shenanigans began to take place. And here's the exact verbiage that's in the court records regarding this case. Over the strenuous objection of the government, the court granted the defendant's motion for disclosure of the names of the witnesses. Can you imagine? Subsequently, witnesses were threatened or influenced by promises of reward for themselves or their families. At least one attempt was made to influence the U.S. attorney. It was a 2-week trial in which many irregularities were noted, including allegations of jury tampering. At the end, you guessed it, Murdaugh and 5 others out of 23 defendants were acquitted. The presiding judge over the proceedings, Walter E. Huffman of the Eastern District of Virginia, made it abundantly clear what he thought of Murdaugh in a public scathing admonishment, and he recommended to the federal government that they look into the use of unpaid badge-carrying volunteers working for the sheriff or out of the prosecutor's office. It was known as a public castigation, but Buster felt no shame. The other defendants were not so lucky, drawing prison terms ranging from 3 to 7 years. 2 generations later, his grandson, Alec Murdaugh, a.k.a. Red, would outdo him in dastardly deeds. Randolph Murdaugh III, a.k.a. Handsome, was born October 25th of 1939. He was a Scorpio. He was born in Savannah, Georgia, to Randolph Jr. and his wife Gladys. Now, Randolph III married Miss Libby, and they had 4 children: Lynn Gossett, Randolph Murdaugh IV, Alexander Richard Murdaugh, a.k.a. Alec or Red, and John Marvin Randolph. Alec, by the way, is a Gemini. Murdaugh III, handsome, had a reputation for being a formidable prosecutor, known for his booming voice, and Handsome served as county solicitor for approximately 20 years. But the power of this family, their tendrils run deep. To honor the Murdaugh service as county solicitors, on May 13th of 2010, a bill titled H4981, which was a House bill, was introduced and adopted by the House of Representatives on the same date. The bill's purpose was to honor Randolph Murdaugh Jr., a.k.a. Buster, as that circuit's longest solicitor. Some of the verbiage in the bill reads as follows: whereas for more than 85 years, anyone accused of a crime in the counties of the circuit dealt with one of these Murdaughs: Randolph Sr., 1920, Randolph Buster Jr., 1940, Randolph III, Randy, or Handsome, as he was called, 1986, until he retired in 2005, ending the Murdaugh line of solicitors. Get that picture? This family's connections run straight into the U.S. House of Representatives in D.C., and through their attorney, DeCarpulitan, a Democratic senator from South Carolina, they connect to the current President Joe Biden, like they have each other's cell phone numbers in their phones. Randolph Murdaugh IV appears to be an outstanding lawyer in the family firm. He's married and has a couple of kids. I don't know much about him. Honestly, he's not as exciting as some of the other Murdaughs. His name is remarkably not connected to his brother, at least not that anyone can connect. Although there are questions, he seems to be part of the invisible Murdaugh lineage. He has distanced himself. Now, Alec wasn't a namesake of this family. His brother Randy was, but Alec appears to be the most Murdaugh-y of the bunch. He was a workhorse with many fingers in many pies, and he was a moneymaker, generating millions of dollars for the law firm and various other people, as well as himself. And now here he is, tried, convicted, and sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences in the same courtroom where his great-grandfather's picture had to be brought down during the trial. And he has about 90 other financial charges pending. Now, all of us who followed the trial are decompressing from 6 long, intense weeks of scientific evidence about cell phone pings, counting steps, phone orientation shifts, North Star geomapping, expert witness testimony regarding wound entry and exit, forensic information on weaponry and ammunition, more info than we ever wanted to know about hog hunting, pathology reports, and Alec lying on the stand. Our minds are boggled, and many of us are sure he's guilty, but not necessarily the one who pulled the trigger. Yes, we need to decompress and come up for air and distance ourselves a bit. Well, we did learn one thing, that if you're going to commit a murder, ride a horse and leave your cell phone at home. Thank you for listening. Kindly consider giving this video a thumbs up, perhaps subscribe and ring the bell so you can be notified when I post the next episode in the Murdaugh saga. Thank you.